숨겨왔던 나의
Prigozhin has always been there as a chef, when in fact he's and he has been serving the motherland there.
안녕하세요. 지식을 구하는 지구살롱 두 번째 시간입니다. 이번에 만날 손님은 러시아의 정보전을 끝까지 추적하는 이른바 푸틴 저격수 핀란드의 탐사기자인 제시카 아로인데요. 행사 참석차 한국을 찾은 제시카 아로 기자를 저와 함께 만나러 가보시겠습니다. Although you are well known as an expert on Russian information warfare, but please introduce yourself to Korean public.
I'm Jessica Aro, a journalist and author, and as a journalist I've specialized in Russia, information warfare and extremism. I've also written the book called Putins Trolls, which is a collection of stories of people, of real individuals who've become targeted by Russian officials, security services, trolls and crimes after they voiced out something that the Kremlin views as crossing their interests.
There was a recent case of Prigozhin's rebellion, in Russia. And so I was wondering, what did you think when you saw the news?
It's difficult to tell because there is lack of reliable sources of the events, that what is really happening. But what I can say is that Prigozhin just 6 months ago told publicly, out in the open, that Russian Federation has meddled in foreign countries such as United States elections, and it will continue to do so, and it will continue to do surgical operations. So this like really detailed and really well micro-targeted. So I'm more prone to believe that Prigozhin is conducting information warfare often, and that his statements, and as well as Putin's and other Russian senior official statements, just aren't reliable, and they are directed to influence the ideas and behavior of Russians as well as international audiences. So we need to be critical when reading any news that are quoting Putin's or other Russian official statements.
Prigozhin has conducted some kind of Russian information warfare. Could you elaborate on the cases of...
Prigozhin is well known originally for being a spy, an intelligence officer who has always worked in the close connection with Putin. He has been known, interestingly, as Putin's chef. He has been present in meetings of Putin with other world leaders. So whenever Putin has been meeting with, let's say, presidents of other countries, Prigozhin has always been there as a chef, when in fact he's an intelligence officer and he has been serving the motherland there. Also, he became more prominent after 2014, after the troll factory findings, when investigative journalists found and quoted Russian sources speculation about Prigozhin being connected to the troll factory in St. Petersburg and being one of its key people. Well, let's say after 2016 US presidential elections, the US investigation into the Russian interference of US elections 2016 started, and they found and established that Prigozhin was indeed operating and directing closely Russian troll factory, which in its part was influencing and impacting American people to have them vote for Donald Trump. So he's very prominent in Africa because he is also known as the leader of the Wagner military forces. They are very active in African countries, for example in Mali, Central African Republic, some other African countries, and also in those countries researchers have established troll operations, trolling for Wagner and promoting them to the local populations as good option to guarantee their security. So this is what Prigozhin has been up to in Africa. He has been one of the key people running these operations. Also in Sudan, where there is now at the moment horrible conflict going on, Prigozhin is also being reported to have directed Russian troll operations and giving advice to the Sudanese dictator on how to repress the population. That's just some of the known examples. There is so much unknown still, but a lot of is known too, because they don't even care to really. It's really easy. Easy just to bring to daylight, because they are not even ashamed of it. Quite the opposite. Yeah, but then there are the stuff that we don't know. A very key person is Sergei Shoigu, who is the Minister of Defense in Russian Federation, and publicly promoting the idea that information is a weapon and mass media is a weapon. However, I do have to point out President Vladimir Putin himself, because he has been known in cooperation with Margarita Simonyan, who is the chief editor of RT, formerly known as Russia Today. I also investigated Ruptly, RUPTLY. It's a daughter company, so a subsidiary of RT, but it presents itself as if it is this sexy startup that serves as video agency. So it sells very cheaply videos to regular media houses and social media, just media startups to be spread around the globe. So it's this like a competitor to traditional video and news agencies, but it's in fact directed by Russian. It operates from Berlin, Germany. I also am worried why is it led to operate from Berlin? Like, who did they have to influence to have to be able to open up a propaganda office in a NATO country in the heart of European Union?
What was the most recent cases of that kind of, Russian information warfare?
There are so many operations that the Russian government is conducting at the moment. For example, sending out messages repetitiously that Russia doesn't want anyone to intervene or help Ukraine militarily, and that we as Western countries who are assisting Ukraine militarily will face consequences. And they have been threatening publicly so many times with nuclear war or World War III, and cultivating these ideas that if we provide tanks and ammunition to Ukraine, which is desperately needs, then we will be the next targets. Also, so basically what they are looking for is to stop the military aid to Ukraine. Also what they are doing is they are, threatening. For example, from a Finnish point of view, it's interesting to look into the NATO-related threats. So just recently, after Russia's accelerated warfare against Ukraine in February 2022, the Finnish population almost overnight decided that it's time for us to join the NATO. However, Russia started immediately threatening us and Finland as well as Sweden, which was on the same path. But this is not a new thing. Russia has been threatening with different kinds of repercussions for as long as I can remember. And even now they continue after we have become members, after the process has been ongoing, they have continued that we will face consequences. Their propaganda is being spread widely in China too, so they are promoting the idea that the aggressor is actually Ukraine. Russia is only a peaceful who wants to negotiate, but the Ukrainian president only wants war, so they are forced to defend themselves. So they are just turning things upside down. And these are, I would say, that some of the most significant lies and manipulations that Russia is spreading from a Western point of view. However, I have to say that there are so many others ongoing. So, for example, the radicalization of people and communities in many different countries about different themes. For example, fueling the anti-vaccine movement and COVID vaccine conspiracy theories, COVID conspiracy theories. Also, they are already promoting Trump again as the next president of United States, as they were already earlier. And yeah, these are just to name but a few.
How is the Russian information warfare affecting the war in Ukraine? What do you think?
Unfortunately, it has affected, for example, in some communities of people who really believe and have consumed fully these Russian lies about who is waging war in Ukraine. You can even see from citizen debates how it has impacted, and there are people who are out there to really tell that it is the Ukrainians who are using, for example, children as human shields, and it's the Ukrainian neo-Nazis that are waging the war, and that Russians are only there to liberate these Ukrainians under the rule of neo-Nazis and fascists, and that Russians are really the peacekeepers, but unfortunately Ukraine continuously is attacking them. Already prior to February last year, Russian intelligence service operatives and helpers have been actively recruiting at least Western people to go fight to the Russian side of the war. For example, from Finland, they have actually traveled to the Russian-held areas to participate in the secret warfare against Ukraine, because they believe that these Russian messages are in fact true.
How many people were?
I've investigated this, and at that time, so a couple of years ago, before the acceleration, officials estimate some tens of people. I was following actively 4 or 5 people. Later, it appeared that some of them have passed away already. You can also pay attention to Russian people and Russian individuals and Russian men who have been subjected to Putin's propaganda and hate speech against Ukrainians for already well over a decade. So you can really tell by what's happening in the war fields that these people to some extent have been weaponized themselves, because they are really ready to conduct these atrocities, genocide, rapes, war crimes, and even after that give out statements publicly that they don't want these Ukrainian women to ever make any children because they're such an animals, and that's why they are raping them, so that they would never have sex with men again.
Is it still underway?
Yes, it's always on the way.
In 2018, there was a cyber attack on the Olympic in Pyeongchang, South Korea. The U.S. had filed charges against Russian intelligence, 6 people maybe. Russian information warfare could target South Korea or organization connected to South Korea again.
Oh yes, definitely. For example, Russian embassies abroad, they are manned with intelligence officers. They are tasked to conduct different influence operations in these countries, so they pose under the mask of being diplomats. However, their activities, what is being revealed publicly, isn't very diplomatic. There isn't only the internet or kind of like the cyber warfare, there's also the physical influence operations. And sometimes the Russian influence operations are actually offers of help, offers of cooperation, now that I'm looking into some cases in African countries, I can see that Russia is playing so differently in different countries. So in some countries it wants to bring this idea that it's all about cooperation and building the relations between two countries, and it's building allies. But the allies might not know what they are heading into.
Oh, as you mentioned earlier, but I'm really curious that, what kind of people participated in?
When we went to the troll factory back in 2015, we were really investigating specifically also this. We found out that it was kids in their 20s. So your regular Russian kids who wanted to just kind of like a good salary. They would get, in dollars, from 400 up to 660 US dollars a month, which is all right salary in St. Petersburg, Russia. According to Russian reports that I read back then, majority of the people, they're not there for the ideology. They don't, believe or heavily support the ideas that they are spreading or the policies that they are spreading. So the circulation of the employees is also quite quick because not many people want to stay in a job that they don't really believe in or that they find it somehow steps on their values. So they leave after a couple of months, many of them. However, there is a minority, according to Russian reports and troll kind of insider views, that some 20-25%, some part of the people really are there for the ideology, really want to work as trolls because they believe in Putin, they believe in the ways that Putin is running the country, and they really want to do something good for the Russian country.
It seems like they are really hard supporters for Putin.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, well, when you think, it must be a dream job for a hardcore Putinist.
When did you start the investigation?
It must have been 2021 actually. I had a videographer, so video reporter inside Capitol Hill, filming a police officer's face from a close distance when a police officer was attacked by the mass of protesters and was put between two kind of like gates or doors, or almost like march alongside protesters in, for example, France, where there have been really active and even violent yellow vest protests. RT/Raptly, they have been known to be the go-to media of the protesters. Some protesters even don't want to speak to other medias than RT or Raptly, and I've seen there's the video on YouTube where the protesters are chanting RT, RT, RT.
That's why we need fact check.
Exactly.
You had to endure harsh consequences for your fact-based articles. Is it true that you even received death threats?
Yes, I've received a massive amount of them, and also some of them have been written online, and there are just death fantasies and torture fantasies. One was a really bad threatener who threatened to kill me and my family and everyone who has the same name. Also that I should commit suicide, the Russian style, so that someone would push me under the metro. They're just really creative.
How long have you had to leave Finland since 2017?
Yeah, I lived abroad for 2 years altogether.
It must have been very painful. How were you able to overcome?
I understand that this is what they do professionally, and this is their job, and they actually get paid for writing this kind of material online, and that I myself have a different kind of job. Our interests cross, that it's kind of like a professional problem. I try not to take it as my personal problem, because I had a normal life, before I started to investigate Russian trolls. So then I just continue my work.
Finland authorities they fully supported to you?
In the beginning, I really much was asking for more help even from the police. However, they handed out a pamphlet to me, or like a paper like this, where there were just some instructions on how I should protect myself. For example, to put some foil in my windows, some security protective foil, so that no one could come in, and to check under my car before I go driving, and to monitor my surroundings.
Of course, you knew it.
Yeah, and I felt like I was a prisoner of my own home. And the police directly told me that they don't have the resources to, protect an individual like me. So I realized I'm on my own, and that's when I decided to leave, actually. So, because that was the only way for me to guarantee my own safety. However, I have to say that there were also police who were also investigating heavily. And it was just so slow. But in the end, the police did a really good job in investigating some of these key people. So altogether 5 people have been sentenced.
5 people?
5 people.
Who threatened you? Or?
Yes, and who conducted these campaigns against me. And one of them had direct connection to the Russian intelligence services.
So they are in prison?
No, the Finnish justice system is quite gentle.
They are living their daily life?
Yeah.
In Finland?
The one operates in many countries, Moscow or Russia, Finland, even Eastern Ukraine, and other countries. He's an international provocateur and Russian troll. One of them has passed away, one of them has stopped writing, one of them is not so active and has actually removed some of his old filth writings, and one I don't know so much about. He actually got convicted.
So recently, are you okay? Are you safe?
I hope to be, and so far I have been.
What are your plans as a journalist, as an author, and as a citizen in Finland?
I will continue to make investigations into Russian operations and exposing them to a wider audience. And from here I'm traveling to Africa with the hope of finding new information and new details about the Russian operations.
My next question is this. You've been through all the death threats and so on, but nevertheless, if you could turn back time, would you write about Russian information warfare again? Why or why not?
It's my interest, and I find it fascinating and important. A story of our times. Years after my initial start of the investigations have shown and proved why my original work was so important. It is designed to have the Kremlin's wished and favorite politicians to power in our countries. For example, so it's a global threat, and it should be treated that way.
네, 이렇게 제시카 로와의 인터뷰를 마무리했는데요. 인터뷰 끝나고 나서 제가 아로 기자에게 이 내용을 좀 더 알고 싶어하는 분들을 위해서 책을 추천해달라고 요청을 했는데 아로 기자가 바로 이 2 책을 추천을 했습니다. 하나는 푸틴의 러시아를 다룬 러시아의 기자의 책이고요. 다른 하나는 우크라이나 전쟁을 다룬 영국 기자의 책입니다. 아쉽게도 둘 다 한국어 번역본이 나오진 않았지만 그래도 관심 있는 분들이 꼭 한번 읽어보시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 지금까지 지구살롱이었습니다.